Thank you for joining our webinar. Thank you for attending the Fintech India. That is Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Dexter O, Market Advisor for Africa, Europe, Middle East, Central and South Asia, Global Division 3, Singapore Business Federation. And I will be your host for the day. Welcome on board on our second webinar for our South Asia festivals, brought to you by Singapore Business Federation. The festival is part of the Global Connect SBF program, which is a globalization initiative in partnership with Enterprise Singapore. Today's webinar is also supported by Federation of India Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Singapore Fintech Association, Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas, and BondEvalue. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. I will bring them up during the presentation, and we'll also have time for questions at the end. For today's program, we will start off with an opening address by Mr. Govinda Dharam, co-chair of FICCI Fintech Community and director of Perfios Software Solutions. Next, Mr. Vivek Kapalia, managing director and CEO of Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas, Singapore, will share about the outlook and challenges in India's fintech sector. Dr. Rahul Banerjee, founder of BondEvalue, then will share on the fintech opportunities in India. To start today's session, let me quickly walk you through SBF and our globalization initiative, Global Connect SBF. Global Connect SBF is an initiative that has been formulated to assist Singapore companies that are looking to internationalize and deepen their presence in overseas markets. Global Connect SBF helps Singapore companies to first learn about the country and the business opportunity it presents through sharing of useful resources like curated market information presentations, advisory on free trade agreement, and structured training through workshops and webinars. We also conduct overseas visits for members to let them experience and understand local business and culture. We help them better understand the potential countries they wish to expand to. Second, Global Connect SBF aims to land business deals and investment projects through B2B matching, facilitating market and business development through identifying the right market for businesses and assessing the business capabilities. We currently have 3 SBF overseas office called Singapore Enterprise Center, with plans for more in the future. Currently set up in Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh City, and Bangkok, these FECs provide on-the-ground facilitation and in-market assistance. Lastly, we assist Singapore companies to localize in those markets for a sustainable business presence to help to grow and integrate with local network and strengthen their presence. Next, we'll conduct a poll to explore your interest on questions relating to financial grants to take your business overseas, and at which stage of internationalization is your company currently at. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Govind to provide us with the opening speech to this episode of Festivals. In addition to being the co-chair for FICCI's Fintech Community, Mr. Govind is also the co-founder and CEO of a leading product technology company in India that enable businesses to aggregate structured and unstructured data, curate, analyze, and assist in decision-making. Mr. Govind, please.
Thank you, Dexter. Thanks for having you over here. Good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here amongst all the innovators and entrepreneurs working on the next big things. As a co-chair of the FinTech Committee at FICCI for the last few years, I have the opportunity to work and interact with a large number of fintechs like you in India, as well as with regulators and various government agencies and ministries. So I have a fair idea of the happenings and the trends in this space. And this is a great time to be talking about these opportunities. As we see huge amount of innovation happening, progressive policies from the government, and fast-paced regulatory changes helping the ecosystem grow very, very rapidly. And all these are demonstrated by the fact that I think last year, Bangalore is only behind San Francisco, Boston, and New York in terms of funding for the startups in the space. And India is the fourth largest funded country in 2021. So all this kind of pointing to the flurry of activities that are happening here, and this is the right time to get involved in this. So almost everyone is familiar with the great success of the UPI from India, the payment platform, and the opportunities around it. So I won't talk about this as everyone knows the opportunities here. So I'll touch upon a few other very interesting initiatives that are just taking off the ground, and that may be of great interest to the audience here. The first one is account aggregation. Some of you would have heard of this thing called account aggregator that is driven by the government and the regulators here. This is essentially a consent manager that makes the sharing of data secure and easy for end users. And this is across all financial services, as well as the architecture is done in such a way it can be applied to other domains also, health or telco or whatever, right? So this whole AA can facilitate very many new use cases that would not have been possible otherwise, and has huge opportunities for fintechs to build a variety of applications on top of this public's good infrastructure. And as I said, as the way it has been architected and the policies drafted, nothing prevents this consent manager from being used across domains. And leveraging AA, there is a new key initiative called OCEN, OCEN, Open Credit Enablement Network, that can make the credit access relatively easy for this large SMEs and ensure that lenders can also have easy access to a large market. This is again a very new initiative with just some of the first POCs happening across the country. And this can completely change the way that credit happens across both retail and the SME segment. And if you combine AA with OCEN and add this other new initiative called ONDC, which stands for Open Network for Digital Commerce, there are huge possibilities available. So what ONDC does, it brings all these smaller SMEs and corner stores to the online commerce world without being dependent on the biggies like the Amazon or Flipkarts. So a combination of such large suppliers with the ability to reach out through OCEN to a large set of lenders, leveraging standard public goods infrastructure like AA, can completely change the ecosystem. And with all these rails in place, there are huge opportunities available for developing new use cases and disrupting the market completely. And India being a large market with all these new excellent digital initiatives in place, it's becoming very data rich. As several people have observed in the past, India has become data rich much before becoming economically rich, which is the next step. But with all this proliferation of data at huge scale, so we are talking of billions of transactions and accounts on a monthly basis, and the associated data, which is like running to petabytes. The other area that is waiting to be disrupted or leveraged is the entire big data based offerings. Solutions utilizing the latest of the AI, ML, NLP, and related technologies. With the privacy law to be rolled out soon, there is going to be a strong legal framework available that will be put in place to ensure that the data of users or the entities are not misused. So as people in this audience know, while algorithms and techniques are important, quality and quantum of data becomes a lot more important to develop, enhance, and maintain serious scalable applications and solutions. And that's what a market like India provides. With the kind of data it generates on a daily basis, the scale that it can provide. And with huge scale of data for every segment, payment, lending, wealth management, insurance. This is another area where emerging AI-based tech companies can focus on developing new products and solutions. For example, leveraging alternate data sources and huge new amounts of and new types of data that is getting generated in the scale for real-time credit decisioning, or using the AI framework, developing new wealth tech solutions that would not have been possible otherwise. Because there has been till no clean regulated way of aggregating data in real time. Or leveraging this amount of data in automating, say, claim processing across health or motor or similar insurance segments. So in addition to providing these point solutions, leveraging this data, this large amount of aggregated data, again, provides tremendous scope for developing various hyper-personalization solutions across segments, combining the power of big data with all the emerging technologies. And of course, with all this proliferation of data comes fraud too. So huge opportunities in leveraging this data to develop various fraud analytics models and solutions, again, across the gamut of the entire fintechs. So there are tons of opportunities for fintechs across both geographies to collaborate, utilize each other's strengths as we are looking at a very exciting growth phase ahead of us. Thank you, and over to you, Dexter.
Thank you, Mr. Govind. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Vivek Kapalia, Managing Director and CEO of Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas, to share on India's fintech sector outlook and challenges. Mr. Vivek is the Managing Director and CEO of Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas Singapore, the largest full-service law firm from India with width and depth expertise. The firm has an edge in arriving at practical solutions, keeping up with newest practices in various sectors. Mr. Vivek, please.
Thank you, Dexter, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Govindarajan, for your opening address. I think when I look at the topic, outlook and challenges, sometimes I try to avoid the word challenges in my discussions, especially since I'm a lawyer. People try and equate everything that we would advise on to be a bit challenging. But I think obviously the opportunity for investments in fintech in India, and I will talk about a little bit of that and also talk about a little bit of the India-Singapore corridor. I think since most of you are Singapore-based companies, probably interested in doing something in India or already have collaborations in India or some sort of market presence there. I think that's another important perspective. I have spent 15 years in Singapore now, so I'm pretty much very local myself. So I understand quite a bit of the regulatory kind of, I would say, landscape between both India and Singapore. If you just look at a few numbers, and I don't have a presentation, so I'll be happy to post my discussion, share any thoughts anyone might have. From the period of about 2015 to 2020, India received about $10 billion in investments. This is foreign direct investment in the fintech space. And fintech was mostly focused on the payments and then grew to lending, insurance, wealth technology, etc. But it was mostly payments. So the fintech kind of India stack that was developed with UPI, as Mr. Govindarajan pointed out, all of that really pushed payments to start with. And in that period of 5 years, we raised $10 billion US. If you look at 2021, which is the following year, the investment was $9 billion. So 10 billion in 5 years, 9 billion in 2021. Of course, the pandemic was a very massive accelerator. And I think also the fact that there was a lot of money, dry powder, as they call it, in the world in 2021, a lot of that found its way to this very opportune fintech opportunity in India. So the market has been extremely, the fintech market has been extremely well funded. And we have obviously seen a number of unicorns, minicons, decacons evolving at a very rapid pace. I think what's important to understand is that the architecture was put in place very early on by the government, and with the India Stack, development of the United Payments Interface, and various other initiatives like Aadhaar, it really and the banking, opening bank accounts for hundreds of millions of Indians through the Jan Dhan Yojana, we actually got a lot of these things right over the period of about 4 or 5 years, and all of these things happened pretty much simultaneously. So India was poised with such a large population, huge markets, to grow exponentially in this place. And again, if you look at fintech together with the growth of e-commerce, India again is a very large e-commerce market, and it's only growing and growing. And there's been significant consolidation. I think the opportunities are just all across the board, honestly speaking. Then if you keep the opportunities part on one side and look at the different products, what exactly is driving this fintech revolution in India? Obviously, as I said, it was predominantly payments, digital lending, of course, now insurance, and even brokerage and wealth management. So these are, I would say, some of the 3 or 4 core current sectors where either there's investment taking place, product development and innovation taking place, and still a very large white space of a unbanked, unserviced population. We are not only talking about tier 1 and tier 2 cities. The beauty of India obviously is that it's a large country with 1.2 billion people. So you really have a very massive opportunity. And out of these 1.2 billion people, we have 700 million odd, even more maybe, internet connections and mobile phones. So I think all of this has actually created this opportunity. The question really is that for a Singapore company, an international company, how does one access this market, and what are some of the important aspects that you need to keep in mind? From a we talked about Bangalore, we talked about, we could talk about Mumbai, we can talk about tier 2, tier 3 cities. At the end of the day, one has to be very has to have good information on the regulatory landscape, and where the Reserve Bank of India is actually, which is probably the main regulator for most of the fintech products in India. How is their thought process when it comes to fintech regulation? So I must say that even though traditionally the Reserve Bank of India, which is the equivalent of MAS, has been a fairly conservative regulator, like most central banks are, it had evolved into a very liberal, innovative a kind of regulator as far as fintech is concerned. So much so that we have now got a separate department in the Reserve Bank of India called the Fintech Department. There are regulatory changes taking place almost on a daily basis. Some of them to tighten up systemic risks, credit issues. Some of you may be familiar with the recent tightening of the credit loading on prepaid instruments which are issued by non-banks. Those aspects of credit and systemic risk, whilst they are being addressed, the innovation kind of framework is still going on. So you might come across headlines in the papers which talk about the Reserve Bank of India coming up with rules and regulations which may cause some difficulty to some players. But I think at the end of the day, India is a very big market, and actually quite similar to China. We have to balance the innovation rolling out of all these amazing products with managing small consumers' interests, etc. So a little bit of that balancing goes on, especially in the digital lending space and in the payment space. When you look at wealth management, when you look at software as a service, Mr. Govindarajan talked about the opportunity in cybercrime and fraud-related services, because that is bound to increase with the adoption of fintech. I think there's a number of opportunities. So the opportunities I would categorize as direct opportunities. So your own products, collaborations, and the other would be the indirect opportunities that exist with respect to a number of different services that can be provided to the fintech ecosystem. Now, coming to Singapore, India, I think one of the very important aspects is that both Singapore and India have, in fact, recognized the importance of collaborating in the fintech space. Obviously, in the private sector, there's a lot of stuff going on, whether it's investments by Singapore into Indian fintech, whether it's setting up of R&D facilities in India, whether it's collaboration. But what's very interesting is that if you look at Indian fintech companies, when they decide to globalize, when they decide to expand their offerings, the largest export of Indian fintech is in Southeast Asia. I think 70% of the globalization that Indian fintechs have done over the last few years has all centered around Southeast Asia. And whilst the US and Europe obviously are also there, they are very, very developed fintech markets themselves. And the price points, the population matrix, demographics of Southeast Asia are very similar to India. And then Singapore becomes a very, very important hub for fintech. So the whole fintech hub ecosystem in Singapore not only helps you go into India, connect with Indian companies, provide services, set up R&D facilities, etc., but at the same time also assist the Indian companies who are globalizing, because this is in fact their market. Indonesia, Malaysia, even North Asia in some context. So I see that with now all of us coming out of the pandemic, etc., you're going to see a lot more collaboration between India and Singapore in the fintech space. In fact, most of you know that Pay Now and UPI will probably go live very soon for remittance from India to Singapore and vice versa. I think from India, you'll be able to remit as you do in Singapore to a mobile number. And similarly, from Singapore, you can remit to India using the UPI address that is available with the individual. So those types of collaborations will increase. As far as challenges are concerned, I would say that information of market access, information with respect to the regulatory framework is very important upfront. As far as investment is concerned, I think most of the fintech investment in India is finding its way through Singapore. Singapore is a great place for Indian companies to raise finance, and similarly, therefore, you will have a number of structures being set up here as far as the fintech investment ecosystem is concerned. And some of the areas where India is still very risk averse is obviously crypto. So I would put India at a very conservative positioning as far as its outlook to crypto is concerned. I'm not talking about blockchain. I think from the blockchain perspective, especially when it applies to remittance and other services throughout the fintech ecosystem, India is very positive. But on crypto, we are a little negative. I would obviously place Singapore somewhere in the middle, and then there are other jurisdictions who are very aggressive on crypto. So crypto, I think currently the market in India is obviously not a, there's no clarity as to where that's going to head. But in all other places, there is just immense value to be created. And lastly, I would also like to tell you a little bit about this new international financial services center we have in India called Gift City. Now, Gift City is modeled on the international financial services centers you have across the world: Dubai, DIFC, and even Singapore and Hong Kong. And it has a clear focus on financial services, and now a clear focus on a fintech hub. So what this really means is that if a Singapore company investor is looking at accessing the Indian fintech market, you may actually look at, instead of setting up something in Bangalore or in Bombay, obviously there are many other factors that will go into your decision making. But Gift City is a very interesting geographical space for you to set up, simply because it's for all practical purposes, like an offshore territory. It has a lot of tax incentives. There's a 10-year tax holiday. There is no goods and services tax applicable. There is a unified regulator set up only for Gift City. So you don't have to deal with Reserve Bank of India, Securities Exchange Board of India, Insurance Regulatory Authority. All of that can happen in a much, so there's a massive regulatory arbitrage available, along with all the tax incentives and the ability to partner globally with fintech ecosystem. So Gift City is in fact developing a fintech hub kind of ecosystem similar to what Singapore has. And I think there's even discussion between Singapore and Gift City to collaborate even more. And also the creation of a fintech data corridor between India and Singapore. So there is a lot of, I would say, activity happening. And I'm just looking at my notes if there's something else I would like to tell you at this point. But I think the bottom line really is that the outlook in India for fintech is very, very bright. I think Singapore has a lot of value addition since it has evolved much earlier into a fintech hub. India is a massive addressable market for your goods and services, and even for we obviously have the largest number of graduates in science, technology, engineering, and math in the world. So the talent pool is there, the market is there. Singapore has great innovation, the sandboxes that you created early on, as well as obviously the entire investment muscle. So the kind of collaboration between both jurisdictions, I think, is an opportune time, and I think the next few years is going to be very, very bright for both countries and fintech ecosystem on both sides. Thank you. Dexter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vivek. I trust that Mr. Vivek's sharing has provided some ideas on the outlook of India's fintech sector and how Singaporean companies can expect when entering the sector. If you'd like to connect with Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas after this event, please indicate yes on the phone. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Rahul Banerjee, founder of BondEvalue, to share on the fintech opportunities in India. BondEvalue is a Singaporean-based fintech company that focuses on Asia bond markets. Unlike equities, which have already been digitally disrupted, bonds have remained unchanged for decades. With private bank clients unable to access live prices, they envision using their deep domain expertise to level their playing field for them via the simplicity and convenience of the app. Dr. Banerjee, please.
Thank you, Dexter, and hello, everyone. I think both Govi and Vivek, on behalf of FICCI and Amarchand, Mangaldas, are hard acts to follow. But as we were designing this 1-hour session, what we thought is that after they give the legal and the fintech overview, I will come in and speak about our personal journey as a company. Can I help with the next slide, please? Hopefully this works. Yeah. So we are the world's first fractional bond exchange. I'm the founder of BondEvalue, and I have been living and working in Singapore for the last 12 years. Prior to that, I was in Hong Kong, but I've also lived in India at the early part of my career. So our vision is a world where every investor can buy bonds. As you know, the minimum denomination of bonds is 200,000 US dollars. And based on an approval from the MAS, and prior to that, we were in the MAS FinTech Sandbox, we have developed our bond exchange that is now also planning to go to India. Oops. So if we look at our footprint, we are Singapore headquartered company, and we have two other countries where we have offices. One is in Mexico, where again, with help with EDB, we set it up. The second is in India. We currently have a fairly large and substantial subsidiary called BondEvalue Software Labs, which is based out of Hyderabad. And we are now opening our office. Both the previous speaker spoke about the Gift City, which is the FinTech International FinTech Center. So we were very proud. If you see some of the awards, the last one is the Gift City Award that we got just last month. And as the winner of this award, this was a global competition that was done, we get direct entry into the sandbox for the Gift City. And what this will allow is, this will allow us to help international clients access the Indian bond markets, but equally allow domestic bond investors to access and trade on our Singapore exchange. So it just goes to show, and I wanted to start with this, that how the two countries and the two ecosystems are very closely meshed together. For the next 5 odd minutes, I'll tell you a little bit more about BondEvalue and bond blocks and what we do. So we've been live since 2020, and we are an example of a company that uses DLT, but as a technology to power capital markets, but we have nothing to do with crypto. The problem that we have solved is that unlike equities, bonds are, the dealing happens through phone calls. And if you don't have 200,000 US dollars or 250,000 Sing dollars, you cannot buy bonds. And as a customer, you can buy equities easily, but there is no screen that you can go on, log in and buy international dollar bonds of large companies like the banks and the conglomerates and the sovereigns. As a result of this, if you are very wealthy, if you have more than $5 million, you're able to put the correct amount of money into bonds and you have a high bond allocation. But below that, you cannot really invest in bonds. Therefore, a very stable asset class is unavailable to you. So our exchange works like traditional equity exchanges in a model that in fintech parlance we call B2B2C. So we as a company deal with banks and asset managers and individual, and then via them, their individual clients come in and trade with us, have access with us. In terms of our custodians and bankers who take care of the client assets, it's Citibank and Northern Trust. And this integration has been done using distributed ledger technologies, which then allows the exchange to work very fast and very efficiently. The main structure is that of depository receipts, which is a very common structure in equities, but has not been done until now in bonds. So you lockbox a full-size bond with one of these large custodians and issue depository receipts in $1,000 denominator. The advantage of this structure is it is dual fungible. You can go from bonds to receipts and from the receipts back to the full-size security. The main aspect of fintech, if you look at the word has fin for financial services or finance and technology. So for most fintech companies like us to have a very good, robust, scalable tech stack is super important. Our member participants can go live with our platform within days, and the entire technology is built in-house, and it uses the modern tech stack, which is 100% cloud-based. On the DLT side, we have used Hyperledger. In particular, for those of you who are in the blockchain world, we have used Hyperledger Sawtooth. And as a result of that, there are a lot of byproducts that have been released of trading efficiencies for asset managers, capital release, mini ETFs, atomic settlement of funds, green bonds, etc. Just to recap, we have electronic, the ability for clients to electronically buy bonds. There's instant settlement. We do much smaller ticket sizes than market standard, and we do B2B2C. And we are regulated, and we have very safe custodians. We are audited by Linklaters. We are, our legal counsel is Linklaters. Our auditors are PwC. And very often you find that all these large organizations are also have presence in other parts of the world. So as we scale, we can scale along with all our partners. The types of bonds that are available, this site has a sample of the bonds that are available on our platform. Lastly, I was asked to talk about my journey. So we now have been around for about 6 years, sorry. And I gave up my job in Standard Chartered to start this company. We started in the first couple of years as information service, and then we moved into the blockchain-based bond trading system, entered the MAS sandbox, exited with a full license. We've raised substantial money a number of times, and in the last month, winning this Gift City capital market hackathon was a special achievement. That's all I wanted to say, and I'm very happy to answer any questions. Dexter, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. Now we will conduct a short Q&A to answer questions you have regarding India's fintech sector with Mr. Govind, Mr. Vivek, and Dr. Banerjee. So maybe I'll start with a question that we have from some of these attendees that are not able to make it. They have submitted to us via email. So I think just now I heard Dr. Banerjee and Mr. Vivek talk about gift cities. So we have also came across this finance tech city that was floated around on the news, and as well as other organizations like FICCI and all these chambers as well. So we would like to know, what are the future financial service cities planned in India other than gift cities? And what would be the areas of policy which may attract Singapore companies to invest in gift cities or even future financial service cities that are planned in India?
Vivek, would you like to go first?
No, I think, Rahul, you are best suited since you just won an award. You know them better than all of us.
Sure. So I think, I will reveal my age when I say this. So for many, many decades, we've always been thinking of India having an international financial center. So first, I want to explain my understanding of what an international financial center is. So physically, it is located in India, but it has, think of it like a international office. So your bank accounts are in dollars or foreign currency, and you are subject to non-financial laws, of which are specially created under that jurisdiction, as if you are abroad. From our point of view, just speaking why we find it very valuable. See, we can do this business from Dubai or from somewhere else. But if you're physically located in India, in Gift City, there is clear regulatory guidance available as to what you can and cannot do, right? And you're not subject to any third country's laws. It's just the Gift City laws. For a lot of players in India, the physical proximity is important. And all Indian banks and financial institutions and foreign banks have set up offices there. So if you want Indians to buy dollar bonds, Gift City is a great point. But the other hand, if you want foreigners to buy rupee bonds, once again, Gift City is a great place to be. So that's the main thing, and I think it is phenomenally powerful. Dexter, my sense is there are no other gift cities being planned. And I think the gift city acronym can be misleading. So we should just think of it as the India International Financial Center. Govi, Vivek, please add or amend what I've said.
No, I think I completely agree with you. I think this is, if this works well, this is going to be a game changer. It's actually set up as a under the special economic zones legal framework. And Dexter, it's important for your guests because India, like some other countries, has exchange control regulations. But when you are set up in an international financial center, like Rahul said about having a bank account in US dollars, etc., a lot of those exchange controls don't really apply. So to some extent, it competes with similar jurisdictions globally. But I think for anyone who wants to do business in India, or who needs access to the Indian market, and at the same time enjoy some of the benefits that you would get by domiciling yourself outside India, I think Gift City is just made for you. Whether there will be more gift cities, I think first the government is going to focus on ensuring that they get everything right with this one, and then maybe in the future one doesn't know, but I don't think I don't think anything is planned currently.
Mr. Govind, anything to add on?
No, actually, FICCI is a partner to them, and so both Rahul and Vivek talked about it. And I think the biggest thing Vivek touched upon in this talk also is this appointment of a single regulatory thing. That's also a huge benefit. So instead of you running from regulator to regulator, now this becomes a single window of all of this. And so overall, I think there's a great opportunity for anyone wanting to set up a shop here. That can be a first port of call, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Govind. Thank you, Mr. Vivek and Dr. Banerjee. Maybe a more general question about fintech or the technology sector in India. So as all of us know that Mumbai is a hotspot for technology and fintech sector currently in India. So we are thinking, there's questions floated by some of the attendees that can't make it. What are the upcoming trending tech hubs in India that would rival or even surpass Mumbai? And how will it affect Mumbai, and what are the opinions about how Mumbai will try to continue to be the leader in this area? So any new cities that you think that will be the new tech hub or even rival Mumbai in the future in India? I mean, definitely like what Gift Cities has. I mean, the full acronym for Gift City is Gujarat International Finance Tech City. It's in Gujarat. So maybe there will be another possibility. Will there be another city in India will rival Mumbai in this sector?
So let me take that. If you don't mind, I would like to slightly correct your statement. If the other panelists don't disagree with me, I would say Bangalore is the headquarters of all this technology innovation and not Mumbai. You were right about Mumbai being the hub of all the financial services, the traditional banks and NBFCs, all of that. Mumbai is the headquarters, absolutely no doubt about it. But when it comes to the fintechs and the associated technology companies, Bangalore is a hub. And as I mentioned in my talk earlier, Bangalore is the fourth largest funded city behind SFO and London and New York and Boston, right? So it's a center of all the technology companies. And so that's where most of the happening things are there. But in terms of other hotspots for this area, I would say Delhi, the whole Gurgaon, Delhi, that area. And of course, Mumbai and Hyderabad. Some of these are the cities where you find lots of these fintech activities happening. And Bangalore, by virtue of being the leader, also has a share of problems because of the talent and the cost and all of that going up. But having said that, it is still the leader in this space. Others, Rahul and Vivek, if you want to.
No, I think I don't think we'll disagree with you on this one for sure. I think, but I do think that there may be another equivalent of a gift city sometime, but but further down the road.
Yeah. I will add my views. And Govi, see, traditionally banking was always, most of the big banks were headquartered in Bombay. We always had banks in Bangalore or Calcutta or Delhi. But, the private sector banking was concentrated in Bombay. Think of it like, if you look at the US, New York had Wall Street and Bangalore was the equivalent of Silicon Valley, right? Now what is happening is that technology has moved ahead so much that where you're geographically based, and COVID accelerated that trend, matters even less. Now, we have a large office in Hyderabad, and during COVID, the office was in Hyderabad, but people were all over. Given good bandwidth, it all works, in a very sort of seamless manner. So for fellow Singaporean companies who are going to India, we have great airline connectivity with many cities, right? Of course, Delhi, Bombay, but Bangalore, Chennai, states in Kerala. So wherever, if you're looking for tech, then go to where there's a lot of tech talent, right? And that choice, your advisors can easily help you make. Sorry, Dexter, long answers.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Govind, Mr. Vivek, and Dr. Balaji again. So we have a Q&A question regarding Gift City. So the attendee has this question. His question is, which leading institution are planning to come to Gift City? Maybe you all can share a bit of this, if possible.
Sure. As of now, the Gift City has a website. And that website has the complete list of all financial institutions that are there. And that list is growing very rapidly. And you will find that a lot of foreign banks have branches in Gift City. And Gift City regulation is such that you can open a branch as well. It need not be a subsidiary if you're a financial institution. So I'll just direct you to the Gift City directory on the website.
Thank you, Dr. Balaji. I've also linked the website for Gift City on the Q&A. So attendees here will be able to access the website and look at the companies that are investing or coming to Gift City. One more question, next question. So this is directed to Dr. Balaji. So this attendee is curious as to whether your platform is available to retail, accredited and institutional investors. If retail is excluded, do you see India or Singapore regulations changing to allow for a broader client base? So
Singapore retail is prohibited to buy bond blocks, right? It's a very unequivocal prohibition. It is allowed under our license terms for foreign countries, people to buy it if it does not contravene their local regulations, right? This classification of retail, AI, institutional is a Singapore classification. For example, in India, these classifications do not really apply. But the purpose of our setting up was to make it more efficient, the process. And we rely on our banks who ultimately sell to their end clients to ensure that only people who understand what they are buying are able to buy these products.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee, on your answer. Maybe we move on to another answer. So I think this is more of the question for most Singaporean fintech companies. So with a thriving fintech sector for India, what do you think are the areas within the sector that Singaporean fintech company may complement or value add to India's fintech sector? So, example, peer-to-peer lending or online payment platform as one of the sectors in fintech. Maybe Mr. Govind or Mr.
Sure.
Vivek, you can answer this.
Yeah. So let me start. It's okay. So say, as I mentioned earlier, so one very interesting area is this leveraging the data. So all the AI related technology companies, because that's a relatively easy entry. You don't need to understand the local regulations, the domain stuff, and all of that, and it can be productive from almost day one. And as I said, with the proliferation of data and some of the public infrastructure available, that is a very interesting area, both in terms of the functionality as well as in terms of some of the fraud analytics and related areas. And the next couple of areas are the functional areas, which could be in the wealth management space or the insurtech space. These are all as Vivek mentioned, the payment and digital lending to some extent have reached that, I won't say saturation, but definitely last 3-4 years, a lot of activities. But wealth tech and insurtech are two very emerging areas. So that, in addition to all this AI, ML, NLP, those are 3-4 areas where I think huge possibilities are there.
Thank you, Mr. Govi. So, for Singapore Business Federation, we are not just looking for Singaporeans companies to, go into the India market, but we also welcome Indian companies coming to Singapore as well. So maybe we will flip the question over. So for Indian companies, in turn, what they can complement and value add to Singapore's fintech sector or companies as well?
So my answer will be biased. As a company, Perfius is very active in that region. So please excuse me if it comes across as a pitch for Perfius. But what we feel is based on our experience, some of the stuff that you mentioned, like the whole lending space or some of the AI related stuff, or this whole insurance space, are very active discussions we have with some of these larger banks and insurance companies. So to that extent, I feel again, as Vivek touched upon it, both of us seem to be both the countries are kind of looking at similar emerging areas. To that extent, I don't really find too much of a difference addressing the Indian market versus here. Obviously, the regulations and the compliance and all of that will vary from geography to geography. But otherwise, in terms of the technology and the opportunities, these are all similar interesting opportunities I find in Singapore.
Yeah, and maybe just to add, I think the question was Indian companies coming to Singapore, right? The other way around. I think apart from the sectors, I think access to capital, access to global markets. As I said, it was always Singapore's always looked as a inbound investment hub into India. But if you look at the globalization of Indian fintechs, I think BondEvalue, I could call it Rahul may not like it, but I would call it an Indian fintech which is globalized in Singapore and will probably go global in other jurisdictions of the world. So similarly, you will find a lot of Indian companies that would or Indian origin companies that could use Singapore as that base. And in that, you will end up collaborating with companies in Singapore, banks in Singapore for products, etc.
Actually, Cyril, that's not the way we see it. We are a Singaporean company, right? We're
I meant it in a lighter way.
Oh,
I meant it in a lighter way.
Yeah. So I think the question. Sorry, please finish. Then I'll give my perspective.
Yeah. No, I think the point I was trying to make is that the synergy is so much between both the countries that it's not only inbound now. You're going to see a lot of outbound activity from India to Singapore. And similar to, for example, companies setting up R&D centers in India, Singapore companies, then those companies will come and access capital in Singapore. So it's going to be very fungible.
Yeah, I agree. I think my perspective on both the questions is it's a two-way street, but Singapore is a very attractive destination for Indian companies to set up their first offshore offices. To Vivek's point, and agree with him, to find sometimes global buying centers, right? Because a lot of fintechs will address either consumers or banks and other financial institutions. So particularly if they are addressing global financial institutions, a lot of them are headquartered here and the decision makers are here. So you come here to get your first POCs, first clients, etc. You also have a very thriving VC community in both Bangalore, Bombay, and Singapore. But sometimes the funds are different. So you can come and access. For Singaporean companies going out, India is a very good tech talent pool, but India is also a very large consumer base for you to, if you're doing B2C, to go there. So there's a lot of detail in the question, and I don't think we have time left to answer it completely.
Thank you, Mr. Govind, Mr. Vivek, and Dr. Banerjee. So we have come to the end of today's session. We hope that this webinar has provided information, inspired your organization to a very extent on potential internationalization into India's fintech sector. There will be upcoming festivals as shown on the screen. If you are interested, please scan on the QR code provided on the screen to register or contact us for more information. On behalf of Singapore Business Federation, we would like to thank everyone for making this event a success. Special thanks to our supporting organization, Enterprise Singapore, Federation of India Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Singapore Fintech Association, Cyril, Amarchand, Mangaldas, and BondEvalue. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again.
Thank you.